right, and I'm gonna check in on the internet, but I believe we should probably be live. So welcome to another CouchCon panel, and thank you, Gio, for coming in and sharing your insight. And yeah, do you want to introduce the panel and what it's going to be about?
Sure. So, for those of you who don't know me or haven't met me before, I'm Jeffrey Thomas. Most of you probably know me at the Discord. Um, I am the author of The Wayward Astronomer, and it is an official side story to the Dreamkeepers universe. Um, so today I guess we're going to be talking about storytelling, writing. There's so many different, sub elements to these broad topics, but I think what I want to talk about today is kind of the core structure of an archetypal story, what those elements are and why they're meaningful, and then compare those to specific parts of Wayward itself. So, for those of you who have not read The Wayward Astronomer, there's probably going to be some spoilers in this talk. So, if you don't want to see any artwork from the book or learn anything about the events that happen, then I suggest you stop watching the stream. You can.
Hello.
And there may be spoilers ahead. So yeah, I mean, Dave, do you want to have any introductory remarks before I guess I just start rambling, or?
Um, just that I would say thank you for coming on and doing the panel because I know probably a high-profile example recently is Game of Thrones, where a lot of people, even if it seems like a story is taking off and doing well, and even if a story is going to deliver something meaningful, sometimes you get to the end of it and you find out that the author was essentially, leading you down a path that wasn't going anywhere, and you kind of feel like the whole trip was wasted, and you're like, well, why did I spend all this time caring about it if this does not add up to anything meaningful? Because I think
Right.
that's the point of a story is we get plenty of things that don't add up, don't mean anything, stuff just happens in life. We get plenty of that in real life. So I feel like
Yep.
a big function of the story is like entertainment is just a necessary function, kind of like wings on an airplane. But the point of an airplane is to fly, and the point of a
Right.
story is to deliver something meaningful. And it's like, yeah, it has to be entertaining first and foremost. A sermon does not fly. But yeah, stories are supposed to serve a function. So anything you can like share with from your experience, because you did a story that worked very successfully. So I think everyone would be happy to hear what you have to say. And here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point. It's like, stories, or I suppose at large, more like popular entertainment, whether it's not just literature, but comics or movies, that sort of thing. Like, they are entertaining and we are entertained by consuming them.
Mm-hmm.
But a really good story, it's like entertainment is the effect that you get from experiencing kind of these fundamental, meaningful elements. Like, human beings have been telling stories ever since we basically have been living in caves. And one thing about storytelling that I find really fascinating is that there's kind of a core formula to all of, well, the great stories throughout, human civilization and human history. Um, so I think, David, I gave you a diagram of kind of what that typical hero's journey might look like if you wanted to pop it up on the screen. Um,
Oh, actually, I'm being informed by Liz that it's in Discord. So yeah, give me a moment and
oh,
it'll be here shortly.
oh, I see. So when I was in Discord, I wasn't even talking to you. It was just Liz.
Truth revealed.
Oh man. So yeah, I mean, like, something can be entertaining. Like, I got a book recently at a convention where, um, it's a bunch of like short stories, like Lovecraftian horror short stories, where it's like this detective and he's like fighting against these evil monsters and stuff, and it's perfectly entertaining. Like I have fun reading it, but at the same time, it's kind of like eating a big buck. Like, it tastes good, everyone likes a little salt and fat and butter, but you can't subsist on that, entirely. if something's going to be memorable and meaningful and for you to have emotional investment, um, there needs to be some sort of deeper foundation to everything that helps carry the reader along. So, the hero's journey, or the monomyth, or this fundamental story architecture, um, is kind of that core story that human beings have been telling forever. And the reason why we keep telling it is because it has uh, meaning built into the entire structure of it.
Yeah, and I have that visual up now.
Excellent. So this is a simple representation of, the hero's journey, our fundamental structure of a archetypal story. And I was not explicitly thinking about the structure of the hero's journey or planning things out when I wrote Wayward. I was kind of just instinctively writing what felt best for all the characters and the events and what was going on. But it actually fit into this formula very nicely, which only goes to reinforce for me kind of how fundamentally ingrained it is into how we try to tell stories and how we perceive things in the world. So, it's a formula, you could say, but at the same time, it's not a formula that is sort of just contrived as some sort of arbitrary, this is how it should be. It's more like this is sort of the innate way that we go about telling this journey. And every book is essentially a journey following a hero. So, Wayward Astronomer is written in third person limited, and it's all told from Hal's perspective, and Hal is the hero of the story. Now, some people think of hero like, oh, superhero, someone with lots of powers, someone who, does all this cool stuff, but really, a hero is someone who's going to go on a transformative journey. So the hero is going to start their journey in basically a familiar setting. It's their life, it's their village, it's their ordinary, sort of day, whatever it is. They're a person in the world. But there's going to be some sort of event that happens early in the story that's known as the call to adventure. There's going to be some event that happens that triggers the hero to begin walking on this journey. So in Wayward, that happens at the end of chapter 1, where this meteorite ends up falling and crashing into the mountains near where Hal is, and he decides, oh man, this is so cool, I need to go find this thing. And it's that element that begins to draw him from his just ordinary familiar settings and causes him to voluntarily move forward into the unknown. Now there are some stories or heroes or anti-heroes, I suppose, who reject the call to adventure because, well, there's lots of reasons not to answer the call to adventure. You got your life going on, you got all sorts of problems, it's really risky, why should I go out into the unknown? But there's a really fundamental, meaning behind that, because, when you live in an orderly, known situation, like you're within the walls of your city, and you're living your life, everything's good, but there's nothing new. There is no new knowledge, there is no new information, there is no new flow of any energy or forces or anything to change things from what they are. So it's a very stagnant and stale existence if everything is known.
Yeah, no challenge either, and without challenge you don't get any growth.
Exactly. So the unknown, what's outside the walls of your city, can actually be very dangerous and very scary, but at the same time, that is where all the new information lives, and it's like this, strange, unknown, dangerous place that holds the promise of everything. And it takes a hero to go out and explore that unknown territory to capture something and then come back and return it to the world and improve society. So Hal goes out to go find this meteor. And when he arrives at the crash site, there's another group of people already looking for it. This turns into a violent confrontation. And, a lot of things change very quickly for Hal. his friend ends up getting taken away. He ends up seriously hurt, and basically his whole world is thrown into chaos, and he is thrust deep into this unknown territory. He answered the call to adventure, and it very quickly and brutally reminded him that, the unknown is dangerous for a reason, and by confronting it, he now finds himself in the middle of this big mess. Um, so it's a really tough journey for the hero, but the hero isn't on his journey alone. So going into sort of beginning to explore the unknown, the hero is going to encounter helpers. Usually the hero will come across a mentor or some sort of guide that can help put him on the path to understanding. So for Wayward, this would be, in some sense, Mordecai and his family. An old, worldly person who's been around forever, who's gone through, the trials of life, taken the slings and arrows, and can offer Hal almost a preview of, what is to come if he can follow the journey to the end. Mordecai and his family help Hal get back to the city, and then Hal has to confront essentially the underworld and elements from his past that he didn't want to have a part of his life anymore, but now he has to confront them and accept them as part of what is necessary. So go back to the monomyth structure just for a sec so I can make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
Sure.
I'm rambling right now, guys, but I'll try to answer questions at the end, or I don't know if Dave, you see anything in the chat that seems very relevant to exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm handling the slideshow, so I don't really have an eye on the chat.
Okay. All right. Anyways, okay. So the hero is also going to find helpers. So Hal has allies that he can rely on. These would be like Johnny and Cassie. They're elements of the underworld, and they live within this darkness and within this chaos that he's trying to navigate. And they give him tools that he needs to accomplish his journey. So, like Johnny, for example, gives Hal a gun, and it's a weapon that Hal's going to have to use later on as he moves through this cycle. And when the hero ventures into the underworld, he's going to have to confront a lot of things that he doesn't want to confront. Elements of himself that are standing in his way, maliciousness and evil and darkness and all these things that are actually a very big part of existence itself. The hero has to confront these. It's very spoilery. I'm kind of walking through the whole book here, but there's a really big and important dichotomy between Hal, the protagonist of the book, and Marcus, the antagonist. They're actually brothers, and they are, in a sense, both, opposite sides of the same coin. If you think of Hal as a hero, he's like a bit fragmented at the part. He's a little bit reluctant to engage with the world. He's kind of forced to just by events. And, if nothing had ever happened, had there been no call to adventure, he might never have done anything else other than, kind of chill, do his thing, never really grow, never really move forward. And Marcus, on the other hand, he's a very active character. He's very aggressive. He is a motive force that wants to reshape the world to suit his needs. And he's been hurt, like Hal, by all the trials and tribulations of life, and it's made him very angry, very bitter and resentful. And he takes those parts of life very personally, and that's led him to, one, be very active, which can be a very good thing, but it's active in a almost vengeful, malicious sense where he wants to retake control of everything to try to get rid of the painful parts of his past. And well, that's not a very easy way of going about interacting with the world because the world is bigger than you, and it's very hard to reshape reality itself to fit your own whims and needs. And you know, by applying such extreme measures to get things done, you could end up just causing even more destruction and more um, you know terrible things to happen rather than actually fixing the problem. So the hero during his journey is eventually going to get to a point where he comes face to face with uh, basically the darkness itself, the worst parts of himself, the worst parts of the world, and he's going to have a confrontation with it. And for Hal in this book, it would be probably chapter 18 or 19 when basically he ends up killing Vanir, and she's very representative of change and death, and change and death are things that are inevitable and part of the world, and we hate them and we resist them, and um, he's basically tired of her nagging him, reminding him that she's there and that he can't get rid of her, and it's just a part of life. And he rebels against that and ends up, giving in to basically very bad emotions, vengeance and hatred and all that stuff. And he has to come face to face with the fact that he's not a perfect person, and he's done some really bad things, and he can't go back in time and you can't change those. So it's like a tearing down of the walls that you originally constructed around yourself to protect yourself from the world. Those walls come crumbling down, and you're kind of left exposed and vulnerable, and you've been reduced down to your core essence. Um, so but in the deepest, darkest night, that is where you find the light and redemption and rebirth. So for Hal in this story, that's with forgiveness and reconciliation for the things that he's done. Miri is very much an archetypal, you know, female figure in stories where she's like the redeeming goddess, the forgiver, kind of the warm, nurturing, um, you know, positive aspects of nature, as opposed to the dangerous, unknown, and predatory aspects of nature. Um, and what the hero does after he goes into the darkness is there's redemption and reconciliation. So in some stories, that's reconciliation with um, the father figure. Sometimes it's union with the goddess figure. But in doing so, the hero gains an important element of himself that then he can carry forward and use to emerge from the darkness. So the hero becomes transformed. He used to be this person who relied on these walls he built around his ego to protect himself from the world. The world has torn those away. He has allowed the destruction to happen of those older parts of himself so that he can be reborn as a more complete person. So from there, basically the hero has to emerge out of the darkness and out of the underworld. And that journey for Hal is, confronting his brother and trying to bring an end to his plans that would rain destruction on the city. And in doing that, it's almost like he's confronting the other aspect of himself, because they're both almost the same person. If you think they're just the same person that took different paths after a specific moment in time. And they have a very dramatic and big confrontation where Hal basically is walking into almost a hopeless situation, but he's abandoned his fear of death, He's abandoned, allowing that to stop him from moving forward. And in this confrontation, essentially, there's this self annihilation that happens. And it brings an end to the night that had been plaguing both of them for most of the story. And then after that, the hero reemerges from the darkness. Now, in a traditional hero's myth, the hero emerges from the darkness and he restores life and energy to the world, and he shares it with the community. In Wayward, it's a little bit of a twist on that, where um, he returns to the world, but the world that he returns to, at least as defined by the society of Anderuna, doesn't really want or need or require the lessons that he's learned. As a matter of fact, they're a complete threat to everything that they're doing to try to maintain control. So he has no place in this static and broken world anymore. This society where people aren't allowed to become wholly integrated and their true selves. So he sort of transcends that. He moves beyond it, and his you can look at how, like, from a superficial standpoint, you say, man, he went through all this shit and, like, it's left him scarred and permanently changed, and man, isn't that awful. But the transformation is actually a very positive one, where he is able to move beyond the confines of the walls of the city, and embrace the universe at large and share it and experience it in a way that he and Miri had never experienced before. And they end by becoming a complete whole, ready to move forward bravely into the next day, as a fully integrated set, as opposed to fractional parts of the whole. And that's sort of the hero's journey as it takes form in Hal's book. And I think that the reason it's so powerful is that each one of these steps is actually kind of a part of the cycle of life that we experience. And a good story reveals kind of these inner truths about the universe that, we all kind of sort of know, but need to have it articulated in a certain way to experience it and actually have it captured. Because, someone can tell you, oh, yeah, if you do this, it'll work, or if you don't do this, it won't work, or whatever. And by having new journeys. So, are we still up, Dave? I think the stream just froze on me.
Let me take a quick look over at Twitch and see if we're still up. Looks like the stream might be frozen, so just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and stop and restart. So, stopping streaming and recording.